Town Hall. Sorry. There might be something odd about New Jersey's election results. Town Hall, just say it. Say you think the election was rigged. They highlight a few points where, one, all the polling was off. I can imagine if you're a pollster, they really got this wrong, and they've increasingly got it wrong. They're all basically worthless at this point. But you also have this map, this swing map. They're calling the strangest swing map ever. And it's because in the deep urban areas, the swing was massively towards the left. So, of course, the insinuation, 500,000 new voters just appeared in New Jersey from 2021 to 2025. And how did that happen? Well, it may be fishy. When you take a look at the data from Jay Jones's election in Virginia, he was winning. He was winning even better. And then all of a sudden, whoop, it flipped. And that was it. Some have said in Virginia, they brought in something like 300,000 mail-in votes overnight. So, kind of like Joe Biden. I will say this. I wouldn't be surprised if it turns out Democrats cheated, but I can explain where those 500,000 new voters came from. New York.
Well, I would say this.
They left New York. They went somewhere.
I'm not at all. I don't smell a rat here. I have skeptical hippo eyes over this article because here's the thing. Virginia always ends up, historically has always voted Democrat when there's a Republican in office, if you look that up. And also, and I think Jersey's the same way, but more importantly, these candidates were, whether they're moderate or not, were posing as moderates.
Yeah.
They stayed very quiet on the trans issue and these cultural issues that kind of swing elections. And that was on purpose because what they were told by strategists was do not bring up things that are triggers like the trans issue. If they bring that up, stay quiet, which was exactly what they did. And they steer where they steer to the economy, inflation. And Americans, again, this is an example. Americans feel insecure. They're not being communicated to. Republicans cannot rely, number one, on being allied with Trump. That's not going to work anymore, guys. You got to figure out a way to talk to your voters and make them feel like there is sunlight on the horizon. You cannot be, worrying about them, they. Nobody gives a shit anymore. What I care about is my kids can go to baseball because I have extra income, etc.
But I gotta, look. I went. There are no kids. I'll keep it simple. There's no kids. So I understand you have kids. I went back home for the 4th of July, and the baseball fields were empty, and nobody was outside, which is insane.
Wow.
When I grew up in my neighborhood by Midway Airport in Chicago, same neighborhood as Jimmy Dore, by the way. Yeah, this is kind of a crazy story.
Plot thickens.
He lived 3 blocks from me.
Did he really?
Yeah, very weird.
You didn't know him?
No, because he was 30 and I was 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Now he's 80. But you'd go on the 4th of July, every block would have a de facto block party. Kids were blowing stuff up in the morning.
Yeah.
And then you'd go to the park and there's baseball games and hot dogs. I went back home. No one anywhere.
Why?
No one has kids.
Damn. Think about that.
Gen Alpha is 42 million. That's half the size of Gen Z or the millennials. And I watched this. There's this documentary called Birth Gap. I recommend you guys check it out. It's on YouTube. It's free. Where he points out in the data the exponential collapse of population. The point being that the factors that are causing women to be childless have resulted in a Gen Alpha that is half the size of Gen Z or millennial.
Wow.
And those same issues will affect Gen Alpha.
And by the way, what you're saying right now is just like diabetes. You want to talk about the real enemy, the real problem? We're not having enough kids.
Here's what it means. If we're seeing an exponential decrease in children to the point where in one generation we now have half the size, Gen Alpha, it's going to be less than half.
Wow.
So that means Generation Bravo, so Gen Z is going to have kids, and they're probably going to have 40 million. And then Gen Alpha will have kids, and it's going to be 10 million.
That's a huge problem.
This is why Democrats are trying to flood the country with non-citizens.
Well, also, by the way, you're going to have the same problem in Europe. Europe they stopped having kids 30, 40 years ago, and now look where they're at. And now they have to import their labor. They have to. And where do you do that? Well,
sometimes you have to. I mean, Japan, they just elected a prime minister. Japan has the worst birth rate crisis in the world outside of South Korea.
Actually, South Korea.
South Korea is the worst, and then Japan's a close second. But their new prime minister came in and said, I would say I'm voted on the mandate of we would rather run our population into the ground than change the composition of the country from Japanese to non-Japanese.
Think about that for a second. This is what happens when a society values production, money, and all those things over everything else. We're going to make all these sacrifices. I'm going to have one kid. I'm going to have no kids, but I'm going to be rich. And it's so interesting to me. Guess what? Going back to your tariffs, going back to America First, going back to the idea of traditional values, you better start having kids. Who said it? I think it might have been Charlie Kirk who said, have more kids than you can afford. And you'll never regret a baby. I've got 4 kids. And
Nice.
I know.
And you only regret one.
I only regret one. Now, the point of that whole story is I pack heat, and I'm going to show you what I'm wearing. It's not that kind of show. It'd be funny if I wasn't wearing pants. But,
It'd be terrifying.
it would be terrifying. It'd be terrifying. Believe me, it's terrifying. Sexy to some, but terrifying to others. But yeah, man, that's what it comes down to. Be careful what you give up for all this efficiency and all this abundance.
Graph go up, we call it.
Graph go up.
Yeah, so it's the libertarians and many moderate liberals just keep arguing, but graph go up. And so what happens is, I was having a debate with this liberal guy, and he goes, "You guys are you don't have kids, now you're getting rid of all the immigrants, so there's no jobs. There's no one's going to work anywhere, and everything's going to go out of business." And I said, some things are more important than having a restaurant to eat at. I don't need the Thai food restaurant that shut down. I need waking up on Christmas morning with snow falling all around, candles lit, and my family coming into the living room under the Christmas tree or presents. That's what I need. And I don't need 500 million people to do it. But the problem is mainstream liberals that we call them default libs that don't really pay attention just go, I want cheap milk.
Yeah.
The libertarians say it's great that we've brought in all of these third worlders because graph go up. And I said, I go to New York City. You've been in New York recently?
Yeah.
So you go to like the Lower East Side, and what is it? It's an open air fish market now, and it's been that way for a decade plus, and increasingly worse, and it smells terrible. And you look at Zoran Mamdani; he's up on stage saying, "I won," and who's behind him? Somalis in hijab. I don't care about a Somali wanting to wear a hijab. I got no problem with that. I want our great American cities to be of the American tradition. And that means you can be white, black, native, Latino, Asian, whatever. But it means you're wearing a Yankees shirt.
Right.
Not Mogadishu or whatever.
Right. Right.
So
it also means though, holding the individual to be in higher regard than the collective.
yeah.
That's a very, very important tenet. You've got to get back to basic principles. And it's very important to understand why the West has thrived, why the West is somewhere people come to as opposed to flee from. It's also very important to understand why the West is a place where you can be what you envision yourself to be instead of having to be what you have to be, which is what most of the losers of history have had to deal with. And there's a reason for that. And you've got to isolate that. You know, it's very important to understand why Australia, as isolated as it is still a vibrant economy and does very well. It's called culture, government, Western values. They work. They just do, from the scientific method to whatever you want to call it.
You know,
Representative government, really.
I run a company. We got a couple dozen employees. And it's something I point out quite a bit that most people run a business understand. We want to manage our finances better. So we do pretty well. And then we're like, let's go through everything and figure out where we can eliminate waste. And as we go through everything, it's always some small thing that's not really worth getting rid of, but together makes an avalanche.
Yeah.
So what happens in the United States is they build up. So the point is, it's easy to build and establish. It's hard to retract. If we here at Timcast said, so we're going to start a new newsroom, and we're going to hire 5 people. Really easy to write those checks and say you're hired. A month later, we're like, oh my God, we don't have the money for this. Really hard to say to those 5 people, you're fired, get out.
Yes.
Really, really difficult. So what do we have in the United States? We can function very easily with 100 million people. Prosperous, amazing, and all that good stuff. We don't want population decline in general because of the technological implications. However, because the system has been built up to this point, we have politicians who say, we don't want to retract. We don't want to deal with what that will feel like. So invite anybody into the country.
Yep.
Phil, the problem is you can't replace an insurance salesman with a Honduran farmer. You can't replace an engineer or a plumber with a Aragua gang member.
Yeah.
And that's something that the left refuses to acknowledge, though. The Democrats and the Democratic Party, they really do have that kind of blank slate opinion about people. It doesn't matter who the person is. People are not particular to what they do. You can just have anyone replace anyone else as if they're just cogs in a machine. And that's not what people are. You can't just have anyone become a doctor. There was a person that I was talking to on X, and he was saying, "Oh, if we just gave people more money to go to medical school, we'd have more doctors." And I'm like medical malpractice is already the third leading cause of death in America. You don't want you want medical school to be hard. You want the requirements to be stringent, and you want to make sure that the people that are actually graduating are really capable, because if not, you're going to end up with even higher mortality rate when it comes to medical malpractice. So the idea that you can just replace one person with another person, that you can just bring people in to the country and it'll be the same as people that would be born here, I think that's totally wrong. But the left continues to push that issue because they really believe it.
The right has been talking about that for 30 years, more than that. I remember those conversations about immigration is great, but it should be skilled immigration.
Absolutely.
For the most part.
Yeah, and
or not even. It's not just about skilled immigration. You want the brightest and best people that are motivated and want to learn and want to assimilate and want to contribute. And
that's why you make immigration hard.
Yes,
because then only those who are willing to achieve that and do the work get in.
So just a quick thing, somebody who lived in the Middle East for 8 years of their life, the Lebanese, there are certain cultures that are incredibly entrepreneurial. The Lebanese and the Syrians before the Civil War, when you had an entire generation that wasn't educated, were incredibly, and Armenians, for example, incredibly entrepreneurial, never work for anybody else. They come and they start a business. The same thing with the ethnic Chinese, the Han Chinese. They come in, you can put Chinese people in the middle of the Congo and they're going to figure out a way to start a business. There are certain cultures that really do assimilate well and work well and really contribute to a society.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.